Story time, and this is Kasha's story. So when Kasha was 20, she went to go work at her local convenience store in her small town. And because it was a small town, it usually felt safe because she knew most of the people, everyone knew everyone, the people who'd come to shop at the store were usually locals. So even when Kasha would work late at night alone, she felt safe in the store. But this one night when she was about to close, a man that she didn't recognize entered the store and went to the alcohol area and stood there for a while. So Kasha, who was about to close the store, was like, "Sir, come on." So she went up to the man and was like, "Hi, can I help you find something specific?" And the man looks at her and goes, "What do you like to drink?" And Kasha, who's 20 years old, says, "Oh, I'm underage, so I can't help you there. But if you're looking for something specific, I can point it out to you." And the man looks at her and goes, "I think I found what I'm looking for." So that obviously made Kasha feel very uncomfortable. Ooh, I have to do a part two. I'm sorry. Part two. So after the man said that to her, Kasha put up her hand and showed off an engagement ring and goes, "Oh, I'm already found," because she just wanted to end that conversation and she knew that saying that would probably close the topic. Keep in mind, Kasha wasn't engaged. She just wore a ring to work because men typically hit on her and she would use that as a way to get them to stop hitting on her. So Kasha then walked back to the register and waited for the man to come up with whatever he wanted to buy. And she grabbed a pepper spray that was by the counter because she started to feel very threatened by this man who was acting shady, to say the least. Eventually, the man came up to the register with a bottle of alcohol, and so she rings him up, and she goes, "I hope you have a good night." And the man looks at her and goes, "I think I will soon enough." And the man then walks out of the store. So Kasha, obviously, is feeling very scared. What did he mean by that? The man goes, sits in his car, and waits in the parking lot. I have to do part three. Part three. So the man is in his car in the parking lot, and Kasha is trapped inside the store. I mean, it's 1 a.m. No one's going to come at this time. The store is supposed to be closed, and Kasha usually walks home at night. So clearly she can't do that because the man is in his car waiting. So she was literally stuck inside the store. So she considers her option. One option is sneak out from the back, try to jump a fence. Another option is to call her boyfriend, but those options don't work. So eventually she thinks, okay, I'm going to turn off the lights and I'm going to wait half an hour. And hopefully in that half hour, he'll be gone. So she does that. She waits. The man doesn't leave. So eventually she calls the cops and tells them what's happening, and the cops end up coming and talking to him, and Kasha watches from the window, and the cops end up arresting the guy. Then they come and take a statement from her, and they tell her, this man was just released from jail for sexual assault. So it's a good thing that Kasha called the cops. That's the end of Kasha's story. Story time, and this is Claire's story. I also have to give a trigger warning for sexual assault for this one. So, when Claire was in college, she got into a fight with her roommates one day, and that night she went to a party in the apartment building that was next to hers. Unfortunately, when she was at that party, she lost her keys. So when she went back to her building, she knocked on her door, hoping that her roommates, who she was in a fight with, would open the door. But they didn't. Luckily though, her neighbor Jack heard her knocking, so he opened his door and he was like, "Hi, are you okay?" And Claire explained the situation to him. Jack was really nice. He was like, "Well, you're welcome to stay on my couch if you want." And so Claire said yes. Jack wasn't a stranger. Claire knew him really well. Her and her roommates hung out with him all the time, so she felt safe enough to go there. When she was in his apartment, Jack was really, really nice. He ordered her some food. He made the sofa bed for her. Like, he was just honestly really nice about everything. I have to do part two. Part two, and trigger warning for sexual assault. So Jack actually also had his friend from home who was visiting him, who was staying with him. So Claire was going to have to share the living room with that friend. Claire fell asleep, and a little while after, she woke up with her pants off and something inside of her. She asked the friend what he was doing, and he told her to go back to sleep. She got up, went to Jack's room, locked the door, and slept on the floor. The next day, Claire told her roommates what happened, but they didn't believe her. And they kept hanging out with Jack, even when that friend was there. And eventually, they ended up exiling Claire from the group because she was problematic. There are a lot of things that Claire could raise awareness about in this video, but what she wants to raise awareness about is validating people's stories. A few years ago, sexual assault wasn't as talked about. I have to do a part three. Please listen to part three, it's important. Part three. So a few years ago, sexual assault wasn't as talked about, and it wasn't as understood. So a lot of people didn't believe some of these stories. So if you're one of those people who didn't believe someone's story back then, it's okay. But you know better now. So reach out to that person and validate their story. Even if what happened was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, even if you're friends now, even if it seems like all of you have moved on from it, Claire guarantees that that betrayal is still inside of them. So you reaching out and validating their story will do a lot. Story time! And this is actually my neighbor Lana's story. She lives right over there. So because of the pandemic, Lana went home for a few months, and she finally came back to London in March. But when she came back, the elevator in our building was unfortunately not working. Now, Lana and I live on the 4th floor, and she had 2 big suitcases with her, so she was struggling to bring up her suitcases. So Lana decided to ask the man who was living on the ground floor if he would help bring up her suitcases. So she knocked on his door, asked him for help, he said yes. The man brought up her suitcases, Lana said thank you, because, it was a really nice thing to do, and she said goodbye. She thought that was it, that was the end of their interaction. It wasn't. A few minutes after he helped her, Lana suddenly received friend requests on Instagram and on other social media platforms from that man. Now, we have a communal mail area, which means that downstairs there's a table and everyone's mail is on that table, and you just pick up your mail if it's for you. That man must have gone through that mail to find her name, found her on Instagram, and added her. I have to do a part 2. Part 2. So after he added her on Instagram, he messaged her. Then Lana messaged back saying, "Thank you again so much for having helped me today." But then the guy messaged her again, and again, and again, and again, and again, and he wouldn't stop messaging her. And his messages would say, "I think I deserve a coffee because I helped you with your suitcases. We should go get coffee." Or, "You owe me dinner because I helped you with your suitcases." Lana started to feel incredibly uncomfortable. She just asked this guy for a favor. She didn't know that she would owe him a date because of it. I mean, what if Lana was actually an 80-year-old man, not a 23-year-old girl? Would that 35-year-old guy then have asked the 80-year-old man for dinner or for coffee? No. The only reason why Lana is being harassed is because she's a woman. If you help a woman, you're not owed a date. A simple thank you should be enough. I mean, Lana now feels incredibly uncomfortable in our building. Whenever she passes in front of that guy's flat, she walks really fast because she's scared to bump into him. Story time. So my high school used to organize these school trips, and there was a list of places you could choose to go to. And the list was amazing. It was like, go to Italy and learn how to cook fresh pasta, or go to the south of France, learn how to scuba dive, or go to Morocco. Honestly, the list was insane. But one of the things on the list was go to a survival camp in Scotland. For some reason, my friends and I chose that one. Not the south of France, not Italy, not Morocco. Survival camp in Scotland in October. So we're 15 years old and we're off to Scotland. It was like an 8-hour journey. We arrive, it's 6 p.m., 7 p.m. So we settle in, we have dinner, and after dinner we're like, okay, we're probably going to go to sleep, and survival is going to start tomorrow since it's 10 p.m. and this is a school trip. No. After dinner, the organizer comes up and goes, "Everybody, put on some shorts, we're going for a run." So we are now running through a forest at 10 p.m. It's raining, it's 4 degrees. I have to do a part 2. Part 2. So we're running through the forest. We don't know where we're going. We don't know how long the run is going to last for. Let me just show you a picture. 1 second. That's me on the run. And that's me from the back. So we're running, and eventually we arrive at this giant lake. And the organizer goes, "Jump in and swim across it." It's freezing. We are in our clothes. But so we jump in. We swim across it, except it wasn't really swimming. My legs were numb. It was more of a trying to get to the other side. So eventually we get to the other side, and then we had to run back to our lodging, soaking wet. Let me show you some more pictures. That's me after the lake. I'm smiling, but I was crying inside. That's us on our run back. That's me over there, right there. And that was the first evening of our survival camp. We were there for 5 days. Usually my stories raise some sort of awareness. This one doesn't at all. It's just a story that I want to share because it just makes me laugh. Story time. So right before the pandemic happened, I bought this thing from a souvenir shop, and on my way home, a piece of it broke. So I was like, I'll just go back to the store and hopefully they have a replacement piece, because the piece that broke was kind of separate. So I go back to the store, I asked the guy if he had a replacement piece, and he goes, "Yeah, we do. Here it is. It'll be 20 pounds. And I was like, oh wow, that's pretty expensive because the entire object was 30 pounds. I can't afford to pay 20 pounds for this. Never mind. Thank you so much. Have a good night. And then he was like, no, wait. How much would you pay for it? And I was like, honestly, I don't know, because I don't know how much it sells for, so I don't know what price to give you. And he goes, no, give me a price. And I was like, sir, I can't give you a price because I don't know. I don't want to give you a price that's too high or a price that's too low because I really don't know how much it sells for. And he was like, give me a price. And I was like, sir, I really don't know. And he was like, 18 pounds? And I was like, that still seems a bit expensive for me to be able to afford. Honestly, it's fine. I'll just go home. I have to do part 2. Part 2. So he was like, 18 pounds is too much? Well, then how much would you pay? And the guy kept hassling me for a price. Honestly, he was being really aggressive. It wasn't one of those, how much would you pay? No, it was like, give me a price right now. So I was getting kind of freaked out and like uncomfortable. So then I told him, I was like, sir, I'll go home, I'll look online, I'll see how much that usually sells for, and I'll come back here and I'll give you a price when I know better. And I had the object in my hand, and he grabs it out of my hand, and he goes, if you're not gonna pay for this right now, then get out of my store and don't come back. And I was like, okay, I'm sorry. And then I walked out. But so that was a pretty scary encounter with a guy in a store because I couldn't give him a price.
Things I've heard through my hearing aids and Roger Penn that I wasn't supposed to hear, Part 1. In 6th grade, my class was taking a test, and my teacher decided to take this opportunity to go to the bathroom. But she was still wearing my microphone, and it was on. So I heard all of that, but it gets worse. I heard a flushing sound, and then I guess she decided this was a prime moment to practice her opera singing. And so here I am, like 11 years old, sitting in class trying to focus on a test, and I'm hearing, pumped into my hearing aids, going directly into my brain, my teacher using the bathroom, and then singing opera scales, very off-key. When she finally came back into the room, she took one look at my face, and she was like, "You heard that, didn't you?" That was not a fun experience for me. Things I've heard through my hearing aids and Roger Penn that I was not supposed to hear, Part 2. When I was 14, I was in a show with a theater company, and the director was fairly well known in the theater world. Many of her students would go on to be on Broadway or be in the film industry. So it was already kind of a stressful and intimidating situation. I'd be backstage, we'd be running the show, and my director was in the audience with my Roger Penn. She definitely forgot it was on. Anytime something happened on stage that she didn't like, I could hear her muttering to herself through my Roger Penn. During one rehearsal, someone didn't do the exact correct blocking that she had told them to, and so she goes, "I would rather shoot myself in the head than watch these kids perform." This was accompanied by some other fun comments that were supposed to be private, including things like, "I just want to go up on stage and throttle him," and "That kid is trash." Another fun one was, "When I get home, I'm going to bang my head in the door repeatedly because of this." Things I've heard through my hearing aids and Roger Penn that I was not supposed to hear, Part 2. When I was 14, I was in a show with a theater company, and the director was fairly well known in the theater world. Many of her students would go on to be on Broadway or be in the film industry. So it was already kind of a stressful and intimidating situation. I'd be backstage, we'd be running the show, and my director was in the audience with my Roger Penn. She definitely forgot it was on. Anytime something happened on stage that she didn't like, I could hear her muttering to herself through my Roger Penn. During one rehearsal, someone didn't do the exact correct blocking that she had told them to, and so she goes, "I would rather shoot myself in the head than watch these kids perform." This was accompanied by some other fun comments that were supposed to be private, including things like, "I just want to go up on stage and throttle him," and "That kid is trash." Another fun one was, "When I get home, I'm going to bang my head in the door repeatedly because of this." Things I've heard through my hearing aids and Roger Penn that I was not supposed to hear, Part 4. Junior year in high school, there was this one boy in my physics class who was always acting up, just being really distracting, talking back to the teacher, and just generally being a class clown. One day, he was being especially disruptive, and my teacher was fed up. So he pulled him out into the hall, but before he closed the door, he poked his head back in, pointed to my Roger Penn on his neck, and said, "Aaron, tell everyone what I'm saying to him." Which kind of defeats the purpose of going in the hall, but so there's this room full of 17-year-olds all staring at me, waiting for me to tell them what's happening outside. "Your behavior in my classroom is unacceptable. I understand you're trying to be the funny guy, but I've had it." "Your behavior is unacceptable. I understand you're trying to be funny, but I've had enough. I'm feeling nice today, but next time I'll send you to the principal's office." "I'm feeling nice today, but next time I'll send you to the principal's office." So I guess I technically was meant to hear all that, but let me know if you want Part 5. Things I've heard through my hearing aids and Roger Penn that I was not supposed to hear, Part 5. Parts 1 through 4 were a little more light and humorous, but this one's more serious. In high school, my freshman year gym teacher had a teaching assistant who she would gossip to non-stop, and the topic of conversation was always making fun of my classmates. Because of the Roger Penn, I was hearing what was supposed to be private conversations. My gym teacher would say things like, "That's the weirdest kid I've ever had to teach. She's so dumb. That girl looks like a cartoon character when she runs." And she would body shame my classmates, calling us fat and other things I don't really want to repeat. After every class, I went up to her and reminded her that she had the Roger Penn and I could hear everything, and that she needed to be conscious of what she was saying. After my advocacy didn't work, my mom got involved and told the teacher that she needed to stop, but she never did, and she continued doing this for the entire year. Despite reporting it to the administration and her department chair, there were never any repercussions. But let me know if you want Part 6, that one will be more lighthearted. Things I've heard through my hearing aids and Roger Penn that I was not supposed to hear, part 6. In 6th grade, my language arts class was right before lunch, and one day my teacher decided she was going to leave early so she could go to lunch with her friend, so she brought in a substitute. The sub arrived about halfway through class and we were all doing silent, independent reading, and I was pretty engrossed in my book, so I was not paying attention to what was going on around me. Because of this, I didn't notice the sub had arrived, I didn't notice my teacher was leaving, and I didn't notice that my teacher forgot to hand over my Roger Penn to the sub. I was suddenly jolted out of reading my book when all of a sudden I hear directly through my hearing aids, "Oh, I'm so glad to get out of there. I really needed a break today. Those kids have been driving me wild lately." I looked around, realized my teacher wasn't in the room anymore, and sprinted out the classroom door to try to find her. I made it to the lobby of the school and saw her outside through the windows, so I ran out into the parking lot and got my microphone back, and then she left for lunch. Do you want part 7? Let me know if you'd rather hear the story about the sub who was obsessed with clowns or the time I was called a sneak for using my microphone.
Someone that has a disability or disorder, what's the worst thing a teacher's ever said about it?
I have so many stories. So I'm hard of hearing, and because of that I need certain accommodations, and I've really battled with teachers and administrators to get these. One of my teachers was so resistant to provide closed captions on videos, even though it was on my 504 plan, and this accessibility is literally required by law. But he said to me, "I'm busy outside of school. I have a life. I don't have time to make accommodations for you." I also have a Roger Penn, which teachers wear around their necks like a lanyard, and it amplifies their voices in my hearing aids. Several school administrators were giving a safety presentation on the procedure of if a shooter enters, and they refused to wear the Roger Penn because they, quote, had stage fright, and wearing it would have compounded on this and made it too hard for them. A girl a year younger than me also used a Roger Penn, and one of her male teachers refused to wear it because he thought it would threaten his masculinity. Don't work in education if you're not going to accommodate all students. This is part 2 of ableist or inaccessible things teachers and administrators have done because I'm hard of hearing. My driver's ed teacher asked me if the reason I'm an only child is because I'm deaf, and if my parents didn't want to risk having another kid like me. Multiple teachers and administrators fought against closed captioning because they said no one wants to look at it. One of my teachers would take the Roger Penn, which amplifies sound and sends it directly into my hearing aids, hold it up to his mouth while crunching into a granola bar because he wanted to force me to listen to it and see what my reaction would be when I couldn't escape an incredibly loud crunching sound. One teacher would take the Roger Penn, which is super expensive, and throw it across the room and tell me to catch it. I've said it before and I'll say it again, don't work in education if you're not going to make it accessible for all your students and show every student basic human decency and respect. I have more stories. Let me know if you want part 3. This is part 3 of things I've experienced in school as a hard of hearing student. So first I want to explain the Roger Penn. It's the device that teachers wear around their necks like a lanyard, and it transmits sounds into students' hearing aids or cochlear implants, and this means that we hear things that a lot of hearing students don't hear and things that we're not supposed to hear. In high school, I had a gym teacher who was awful with the Roger Penn. She had a teacher's assistant who she would constantly gossip to during class, and it wasn't harmless gossip. This teacher would body shame the girls in my class, saying, "So-and-so is so fat, that kid is so stupid, that's the weirdest kid I've ever taught." And throughout class, she would constantly name drop students and mock them in what was supposed to be a private conversation between her and her assistants, but I was hearing it all. It wasn't a one-time thing, it happened every single day, and every day I'd remind her that I could hear her and she needed to stop. My mom had a meeting with her and told her that she needed to stop. We went to the administration and told them, but nothing ever changed despite how much I advocated for myself. The education system needs to do better. I cannot believe this has happened. I was on my way back from getting groceries, and it was raining, so I went under an overhang to avoid the rain. And there was this woman with a microphone that says Channel 4 on it, and it's like big fancy camera. Keep in mind I'm wearing my mask that says hard of hearing in big letters. I veer out of the way to try to avoid getting in the shot, but the woman with the microphone runs up to me and stops me. She says something to me and points the microphone at me, but I can't hear her, and she's wearing a mask, so I can't lip read. And so I'm like, what? And so she repeats whatever she said, but I still can't get it. So I'm like, "I'm deaf, I'm sorry, I can't hear you." And she's like, "Oh, okay," and lets me walk away. But it was on the news, and it was live. I looked it up, and Channel 4 in Boston is CBS.
Story time about how I found out that my boyfriend was cheating on me for 3 months straight at his new job. So whenever all this happened, I was a senior in high school and my boyfriend had just graduated. and we were both living at his mom's because I had some family stuff going on at the time, so I was like staying there during the summer. Well, my boyfriend had to quit his job because they were shutting down, and he had worked there for over 3 years. So he started looking for a new job, and he found one that was literally 3 minutes down the street from his mom's house. And it was a sports bra and grill, so he started working there. Well, after working there for I think about a month, his brother had came home from jail. And his brother was looking for a job at the time whenever he got out of jail, so my boyfriend, of course, was like, hey, why don't you come work with me? And his brother was all for it, you know, he was excited to be working with his brother. Well, I want to say about 2 weeks after his brother went to work with him, he came home the one night and he had told me about this one girl who had given him her phone number, and he took it out of his pocket and it was a piece of paper with her phone number on it. So my boyfriend and I had had problems in the past with like trust issues and stuff like that, but at this time I had kind of gotten over it because it happened a long time ago when we first started dating. So whenever this happened, my trust issues started to creep back in, you know, because I started thinking, well, why did she feel comfortable enough giving you her phone number to talk about her problems with you? Because that's the reason why she apparently gave him her phone number, was so that way they could talk about her problems. Sis, get a therapist. There is no reason for that. Anyways, so of course this pisses me off. I tell him to throw the phone number away, and I asked him what the girl's name was, and he said her name was Shady. And of course after that, Shady was #1 on my hit list. Just kidding. Well, after that, he starts going into work really early and staying very late. And whenever I had talked with him about it, he was always blaming it on somebody else or something else. He would be like, well, I had to close tonight because nobody else wanted to stay and close. Somebody didn't do their job right tonight, so I had to stay and do their job. And it was just really weird because, you know, you would expect that to happen maybe like not so often, but it was literally happening every single day that he had work. So yeah, at that point things were just getting very weird and it was making me question a lot of things. Well, then the next red flag that happened that I should have noticed was that he started having issues with me dropping him off and picking him up from work. Because I had always dropped him off and picked him up at work. For some reason, he like started having an issue with it. He was like, no, he was like, I can do it myself, like, you know, you don't need to do that. And so of course that also was weirding me out, because that's weird. Why are you just gonna start having a problem with me picking you up and dropping you off at work? And he was the one with the car, so that meant that I was literally stuck at his parents' house all day and I didn't have a car. Well, the one day I remember I had begged him to use the car because I had some errands to run that day, and he let me use the car. So like I said, he let me drop him off and used the car that day. Well, when I went to pick him up that night, there were these 3 girls sitting outside, and there was one specifically that was giving me an absolute death stare. You would have thought that I literally like screwed her boyfriend. Yeah, no, but she was just like giving me a really nasty look, and I had no idea why, but I just kind of ignored it. Well, a few days after that, my boyfriend and his brother got into this huge argument because my boyfriend had told me that his brother was flirting with girls at work. And at the time, his brother's girlfriend was like one of my best friends. Love her, by the way. So what did I do? Of course I told her. Like, why am I not going to tell her? So I went and told her. So she was flipping out on her boyfriend. And can I just say something? I don't think that he was flirting with other girls at work. I really think that it was just a ploy for my boyfriend to kind of get the attention off of him onto his brother and the fact that he was doing things wrong. So of course I told her, and they got into a big argument. We're gonna call my boyfriend like Derek or something. Yeah, we're gonna call him Derek. So his brother calls me, and he was flipping out on Derek before that, and he calls me and he says, right hand up to God, Derek is screwing a girl named Shady at work. I'm literally freaking out on my boyfriend, but I don't know who to believe, because the thing is like, they are always playing pranks on each other. You know, you don't know when they're serious. They'll literally like make these jokes up, you know, say, oh yeah, like she's cheating on you with blah 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 blah, as a joke. Anyways, so what do? I do what any reasonable girlfriend would do. I go into my boyfriend's room and I start screaming at him. And he had been texting his brother, and I told him, I said, let me see your text messages between you and your brother. And before he gives me his phone, he literally swipes over and deletes the conversation between him and his brother. So I went over and I grabbed his computer, which is connected to his phone. Like, the text messages go onto his computer also. So I grab his computer and I look at the text on there, and it still looked like some were missing, but the only thing that it said was, please don't do it. My boyfriend had sent that to his brother. So now I'm obviously very, very sketched out, but my dumbass is still believing him. Love that for me. So because I'm a dumbass, I end up believing my boyfriend, and that night I was just so pissed off. I told him, hey, like, I'm gonna go to my friends tonight. Like, I can't be around you. I need time to think. Well, fast forward, I guess him and his brother stopped fighting, and his brother told me, he was like, yeah, no, I was lying about the whole thing. Like, he didn't do anything. He's very loyal to you. Whatever. But yeah, that was the end of that situation. So we hadn't really talked about it again after that. I was still having like inklings that like he was cheating on me, which were totally correct, and I find out every single time, so I don't even know why he lies to me about it. So yeah, that situation was over and done with. So a month after that whole situation, fall time rolls around. My boyfriend moves out of his parents' house. I couldn't move out yet because I was not 18, and that's whenever him and I started having troubles in our relationship, even more than we did before. He just was not caring about me and how I felt in the relationship. He never wanted to be around me. He would always choose his friends over me. So at that point, I had just had enough and I broke up with him. Did I want to get back with him 2 hours after I broke up with him? Yes. Did I? No. I decided that I was going to be a strong, independent woman at that time. So I decided, why not make a Tinder? Was I underage? Yes. Did I put jailbait in my bio? Yes, I did. So that's that. I pretty much made a Tinder, and I guess literally the day after I made mine, one of Derek's friends decided to tell Derek to make a Tinder also. So he makes a Tinder, and the first person he sees on there is me. So I left school early that day, and I get a text message from Derek saying, you are such a whore. So at that point, I'm like really pissed off. I'm like, I don't care, like, do what you want. Like, sorry that you're angry that I'm deciding to move on. Like, not my fault. By the way, if you ever break up with your boyfriend, get a Tinder. That shit is a confidence boost. You will literally have all these guys telling you that you're so hot, and it's so nice to just reject them. So I guess my bad bitch parade had ended because I got really lonely the one night, and I had texted him asking what he was doing, and he pretty much said nothing. So what did I do? I went to his house, and when I was there, we had talked about things, and I asked him, I said, I want to know the truth about everything. I said, I already know half of what's going on, but I want to know what you meant by that text message. I didn't know anything, by the way. This kid literally just told on himself every single time that he cheated on me. He was literally so freaking dumb. He says there was this girl at work, and I said, what's her name? He told me her real name now, and I said, did you do the nasty with her? And he said, yeah. I said, how many times? And at this time, I'm kind of like holding back my tears because my boyfriend was a sociopath, and if he saw you putting out any emotion, he would base his emotion off of that. So anytime that he cries too, I literally just ignore him because he just does it to make you feel bad instead of actually crying because he feels bad. So I'm sitting there with a straight face, and I'm like, you know, how many times, where, when, like, blah 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 blah. He says, I don't know how many times. And at that point, that already makes me think, oh great, like, you were going into work every single day and screwing this girl while you were there. Nice. I slept there that night because it was like, it was too late for me to go home. No, he did not do anything. I literally slept on the couch. He slept in his bedroom because I was not about to do that. But I made him think that I was fine with it. Like, you know, I was like, oh, okay, well, you know, like, it's in our past, just promise you'll never hurt me again. So the next day, I wake up and I go to school. I left school early that day. I went home, I went to my dad's house, and I pretty much just stayed home for majority of the day. And that night I had found that girl on Snapchat, which was very stupid of me because I am all about not blaming the girl. Like, before I had such like a nasty mentality of it was the girl's fault, not the guy's, which is totally not the case. So I will never ever go off on a girl if I ever find out that my boyfriend is cheating on me with a girl, because it's just, they're not the one in your committed relationship. So I find this girl on Instagram and I find her on Snapchat, and like I said, I add her on Snapchat, and when I see her Instagram bio is literally, I'm your boyfriend's favorite. Her pictures are all captioned stuff about screwing girls' boyfriends. I didn't know that was a trend, but actually a lot of girls like to do that. I think like a few weeks ago, this girl was talking on the phone saying how she loves fucking guys with boyfriends. Love that for you, sis, just not for me. So at that point, I'm getting really angry because when I'm looking on all these photos, like her captions are literally just disgusting. And I add her on Snapchat. And I text her and I say that, you know, like, you're nasty, you're a whore, blah, 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 blah. Just like me being any jealous, insecure girlfriend. And I let the emotions get the best of me that night. But it was really funny because, like, she was talking to me and she was like, it's not my fault your boyfriend wanted to screw me, and you know, it's not my fault that I'm better looking than you, blah 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 blah, just this, that, and the next. So like, I'm really letting this girl get under my skin. Like, I'm like really pissed off. Like, at this point, I really wanted to go to this girl's house and just like do some very not nice things. So soon enough, I find out that the owner of the restaurant that he was working at, that's his daughter. So I'm ready to literally call their work and be like, your daughter's a whore. Like, she's literally screwing people in your back kitchen and stuff like that where the food is. But instead, I just block her on Snapchat because I knew that I was letting my emotions get the best of me. And I sneak out of my dad's house that night and go to my friend's house. Well, when I went to my friend's house, her boyfriend was best friends with my boyfriend. This is not his brother's girlfriend, by the way. This is just one of my best friends. And her boyfriend decides to come clean on some things that my boyfriend had told him. And he's like, yeah, no, like, he always was telling me about how when he would go into work, there would be these girls all over him. He was screwing 2 girls at work every single day whenever he went in there. So at this point, I'm literally livid. Like, I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, I feel like the worst part about it all was the fact that because I had so many trust issues from him in the past, he was coming home like every night, and like when I would talk to him about how I was feeling, about how, you know, I was having doubts, you know, about him being faithful, he would be like, I don't know why you feel like that. Like, I've been so loyal. Like, I'm actually so proud of myself because I haven't done anything wrong. After that, I call and I tell him that I pretty much know everything. And I found out the reason why everything happened the way it did. So he was going into work early and staying later so he could screw this girl at work. Actually, these 2 girls at work. And the reason why he did not want me picking him up and dropping him off was because apparently this girl had a plan to come to the car and beat my ass because she wanted my boyfriend. So yeah, pretty much after that, everything started making sense and him and I broke up, but my dumb ass got back together with him. So yeah, ladies, if you see red flags and you think he's cheating on you, he probably is, and he's probably dumb enough to tell on himself, so make sure to trick him into telling you.